Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Art of Creation show. And here's our live episode for the week. And yeah, I'm a little late. Oops, sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Hashtag. Yeah, oh my gosh, adventure living took precedent. There was a loose plan, 1 o'clock. And then, yeah, I kept having fun. So, for those of us who are coming back from the last episodes, welcome back. For those of you new, thanks for being here. We have already read the first two parts of the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. My name is Rebecca Boswell. I am your host and coach for the next hour and maybe even beyond. Who knows? If you'd like to work with me, that would be even more fun and awesome. So everybody who's joining us live, thank you, thank you, thank you. And those of you joining later in the replay, thank you for being here too. I love it. So yeah, the first episode of the season, a couple weeks back, we did chapters 1 and 2 from part 1 of the book. So part 1 is Awakening Consciousness. So the first episode had chapters 1, The Voice Inside Your Head, and chapters 2, Your Inner Roommate. And then the following week, or episode 2, we had chapters 3 and 4, Who Are You? And The Lucid Self. And then last week, we packed 3 chapters into the episode to get all of part 2 in one reading. So we had part 2, Experiencing Energy. And we had chapter 5, Infinite Energy. Chapter 6, The Secrets of the Spiritual Heart. And 7, Transcending the Tendency to Close. So lots of juiciness. So if you're joining just for now, that's awesome. And I invite you to go back and hear those as well. And I'm glad to have you on the adventure. So today we are starting part 3, which is entitled Freeing Yourself. And we are going to read chapter 8, Let Go Now or Fall. And chapter 9, Removing Your Inner Thorn. So let's begin. 71. I hope you guys are having a great day. Okay. And how does it get any better than this? All right. Let go now or fall. The exploration of self is inextricably interwoven with the unfolding of one's life. The natural ups and downs of life can either generate personal growth or create personal fears. And come on, in all likelihood, a little bit of both. Plus all the other stuff, right? Okay. So which of these dominates? Which of these dominates is completely dependent. Oh. Here we go. Which of these dominates is completely dependent upon how we view change. Change can be viewed as either exciting or frightening. But regardless of how we view it, we must all face the fact that change is the very nature of life. If you have a lot of fear, you won't like change. You'll try to create a world around you that is predictable, controllable, and definable. You'll try to create a world that doesn't stimulate your fears. Fear doesn't want to feel itself. It's actually afraid of itself. So you utilize the mind in an attempt to manipulate life for the purpose of not feeling fear. People don't understand that fear is a thing. It's just another object in the universe that you are capable of experiencing. You can do one of two things with fear. You can recognize that you have it and work to release it, or you can keep it and try to hide from it. And if you haven't read or listened to the chapter, I think, Who Are You? That's a really great one to go back and either listen to either listen to for the first time or listen to again, because that's where we really look at the subject-object relationship and really look at where all of these things, these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions, these experiences that we think are us that cause all kinds of upset and trauma and drama, we start to see how they're just things that we're experiencing and that we don't have to get sucked in by them. And so fear is one of those things as well. All right. Because people don't deal with fear objectively, they don't understand it. They end up keeping their fear and trying to prevent things from happening that would stimulate it. They go through life attempting to create safety and control by defining how they need life to be in order to be okay. This is how the world becomes frightening, right? Because then anything you can't control is, by this logic, scary. This may not sound frightening. It may sound safe. But it's not, right? So this is like, it's the box that we create, right? And when we create this box, we think we're protecting ourselves from the outside world, but we're actually also imprisoning ourselves and keeping us from all the amazing things, the joys, the thrills, the experiences of the outside world that can actually contribute and where we can contribute. Okay, gosh, lots of asides today. All right, let's read what's here. Okay. Life becomes a me against the world situation. When you have fear, insecurity, or weakness inside of you, and you attempt to keep it from being stimulated, there will inevitably be events and changes in life that challenge your efforts. Because you resist these changes, you feel that you are struggling with life. You feel like this person is not behaving the way they should, and this event is not unfolding the way you want. You see situations that happened in the past as disturbing, and you see things down the road as potential problems. Your definitions of desirable and undesirable, as well as good and bad, all come about because you have defined how things need to be in order for you to be okay. We all know that we're doing this, but nobody questions it. We think we're supposed to figure out how life should be and then make it that way. Only someone who looks deeper and questions why we need the events of life to be a particular way will question this assumption. How did we come up with the notion that life is not okay just the way it is, or that it won't be okay the way it will be? Who said that the way life naturally unfolds is not all right? The answer is fear says so. The part of you inside that's not okay with itself can't face the natural unfolding of life because it's not under your control. If life unfolds in a way that stimulates your inner problems, then by definition it's not okay. It's really very simple. That which doesn't disturb you is okay, and that which does disturb you is not. We define the entire scope of our outer experience based upon our inner problems. If you want to grow spiritually, and that's meaning finding power within instead of trying to find it from external sources, power, fulfillment, joy from within versus from external sources. We define the entire scope of our outer experience based upon our inner problems. If you want to grow spiritually, you have to change that. If you're defining creation based upon the most messed up part of your being, what do you expect creation to look like? It's going to look like a frightful mess. And this is so fun, right? Choice creates, right? Choice creates. And so what are we actually functioning from, right? What are we choosing? Is it what we're choosing out of lightness, out of an inner knowing? Is it something we're choosing because we should, or because there's pressure to in order to please other people, right? The more that we can become aware of what is actually behind the choices that we're making, we can completely overhaul and rejuvenate and energize and love the life we're creating and living. So if you're defining creation based upon the most messed up part of your being, what do you expect creation to look like? It's going to look like a frightful mess. So how awesome is that? When we shift that, we can, like, if we were to rewrite that sentence, right? We could say, when we make our choices and we create based upon the greatness within, based upon the knowing within, based upon the lightness, the joy, the ease that we can tap into, then life can be a beautiful dance. It can be a symphony, a masterpiece, right? The art. Okay, as you go spiritually, you will realize that your attempts to protect yourself, I guess that was the universe saying, ding, correct. Okay. As you grow spiritually, you will realize that your attempts to protect yourself from your problems actually create more problems. So more problems beget more problems. So what happens when, or what do we create when we're less problem focused and more joy focused, lightness focused, possibility focused? Possibility, I mean, you can drill yourself into a hole with possibility focus if you're only looking at the possibilities of the worst case scenario. But also, you can create a lot of space by allowing the possibilities to show what could actually create greater. If you attempt to arrange people, places, and things so they don't disturb you, it will begin to feel like life is against you. You feel that life is a struggle and that every day is heavy because you have to control and fight with everything. There will be competition, jealousy, and fear. You will feel that anyone at any moment could cause you disturbance. All they have to do is say or do one thing, and the next thing you know, there's disturbance inside of you. That makes life a threat. That's why you have to worry so much. That's why you have all these dialogues going on inside your mind. You're either trying to figure out how to keep things from happening, or you're trying to figure out what to do because they did happen. You're fighting with creation, and that's what makes creation itself the most frightening thing in your life. And not to mention, in this scenario, right, you're never in the present, right? Because you're either trying to fix the past, or you're worrying about how the future is going to be, and meanwhile, you're missing your whole life, which is actually right now. The alternative is to decide not to fight with life. You realize and accept that life is not under your control. Life is continuously changing, and if you're trying to control it, you'll never be able to fully live it. Instead of living life, you'll be afraid of life. But once you've decided not to fight with life, you'll have to face the fear that was causing you to fight. Dun, dun, dun. No, anything but that. Fortunately, you don't have to keep this fear inside of you. There is such a thing as a life without fear. In order to relate to this possibility, we must first have a deeper understanding of fear itself. And what if this is actually where personal evolution, cultural evolution, evolution of humankind actually lies, right? Where we can actually flip that switch from being dominated by the fight or flight mechanism and actually have the awareness and the choice to move into a different possibility. So when you have fear inside of you, the events of life invariably stimulate it. Like a rock thrown into water, the world with its continuous changes creates ripples in whatever is held within you. There's nothing wrong with that. Life creates situations that push you to your edges, all with the effect of removing what is blocked inside of you. That which is blocked and buried within you forms the root of fear. Fear is caused by blockages in the flow of your energy. When your energy is blocked, it can't come up and feed your heart. Therefore, your heart becomes weak. When your heart is weak, it becomes susceptible to lower vibrations. And one of the lowest of all vibrations is, any guesses? Fear. Fear is the cause of every problem. It's the root of all prejudices and the negative emotions of anger, jealousy, and possessiveness. If you had no fear, you could be perfectly happy living in this world. Nothing would bother you. You'd be willing to face everything and everyone because you wouldn't have fear inside of you that could cause you disturbance. The purpose of spiritual evolution is to remove the blockages that cause your fear. The alternative is to protect your blockages so that you don't have to feel fear. Of course, it doesn't really work. Then you're afraid of whether or not you're going to be able to protect your blockages. Go figure. It's very exhausting. The alternative is to protect your blockages so that you don't have to feel fear. To do this, however, you will have to try to control everything in order to avoid your inner issues. It's hard to understand how we decided that avoiding our inner issues is an intelligent thing to do. But everyone's doing it. Everyone is saying, I will do every single thing I can to keep my stuff. If you say anything that disturbs me, I will defend myself. I'll yell at you and make you take it back. If you cause any disturbance inside of me, I will make you sorry. In other words, if somebody does something that stimulates fear, you think they did something wrong. You then do everything you can to make sure they never do it again. First, you defend yourself, and then you protect yourself. You do whatever you can to keep from feeling disturbance. Eventually, you become wise enough to realize that you do not want that stuff inside of you. It doesn't matter who stimulates it. It doesn't matter what situation hits it. It doesn't matter whether it makes sense or whether it seems fair or not. Unfortunately, most of us are not that wise. We're really not trying to be free from our stuff. We're trying to justify and keep it. If you truly want to grow spiritually, you'll realize that keeping your stuff is keeping you trapped. Eventually, you'll want out at any cost. You will then realize that life is actually trying to help you. Life is surrounding you with people and situations that stimulate growth. You don't have to decide who's right or wrong. You don't have to worry about other people's issues. You only have to be willing to open your heart in the face of anything and everything, and permit the purification process to take place. When you do this, the first thing you'll see is that situations will unfold that hit your stuff. But in truth, that's exactly what has been happening your entire life. The only difference now is that you see it as a good thing because it's an opportunity to let go. The stuff that holds you down periodically rears its head. When it does, let it go. You simply permit the pain to come up into your heart and pass through. If you do that, it will pass. If you are sincerely seeking truth, you'll let go every time. This is the beginning and end of the entire path. You surrender yourself to the process of emptying yourself. When you work with this, you start to learn the subtle laws of the process of letting go. It all starts with a choice. There is a law you will learn very early in the game because it is an unavoidable truth. You will learn it early, but you will fall many times while trying to adhere to it. The law is very straightforward. When your stuff gets hit, let go right then, because it will be harder later. It won't be easier if you explore it or play with it, hoping to take the edge off. It won't be easier to think about it, talk about it, or try to release only part of it at a time. If you want to be free to the core of your being, you must let go right away, because it will not be easier later. Do you remember the story of, I can't remember the name of it, but I loved it when I was a kid. It was about this little dragon that was born in this household, and everybody, nobody would acknowledge that there was this little dragon living in the house. And so it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it literally took up the whole house. And finally they acknowledged it, and then it got small again because it just wanted to be acknowledged. And every time I read this passage, I always picture that little dragon. So maybe we can use, if you'd like, you can use that little image too, and as a reminder when this stuff comes up. In order to live by this law, you have to understand its principles. First, you must be aware that there is something within you that needs to be released. If I can find the link, a link to that book, I'll put it in the show notes in case you don't know it. It's a really cute story. And I mean, dragons, right? How can you not love a good little dragon? Or, you could not like it, I guess. Okay, so first, you must be aware that there is something within you that needs to be released. You must then be aware that you, the one who notices the stuff coming up, are distinct from what you're experiencing. You are noticing it, but who are you? This place of centered awareness is the seat of the witness, the seat of the self. That is the only seat from which you can let go. Let's say you notice that something in your heart gets hit. If you let go and stay in the seat of awareness, what you are noticing will pass. If you don't let go and instead get lost in the disturbed feelings and thoughts that arise, you'll see a sequence of events unfold so quickly you won't know what hit you. If you don't let go, you'll notice that the energy that got stimulated in your heart works like a magnet. It's a phenomenally attractive force that will pull your consciousness into it. The next thing you know, you won't be there. It's like a black hole. It just sucks everything and all of you right into it. The next thing you know, you won't be there. You won't maintain the same perspective of awareness that you had when you first noticed the disturbance. You will leave the seat of objective awareness from which you saw your heart begin to react, and you will get involved in the shifting energies coming from your heart. Sometime later, you'll come back and realize you weren't there. You'll come back and realize that you were totally lost in your stuff. Then you will hope that you didn't say or do anything you'll regret. You'll look at the clock and 5 minutes will have gone by, or an hour, or even a year. You can lose your clarity for quite some time. Where did you go? How did you come back? We will address these questions shortly, but what really matters is that when you're seeing clearly, you're not going anywhere. You're simply sitting in the seat of centered awareness, watching your stuff get hit. As long as you're watching, you're not getting lost in it. The key is to understand that if you don't let go immediately, the disturbing force of the activated energy draws the focus of your consciousness. As your consciousness gets immersed in the disturbance, you lose your clear seat of self. It happens instantaneously. There's no feeling of going anywhere any more than there is when you leave the room by getting absorbed in a book or TV show. You simply lose the fixed point of consciousness from which you were objectively aware of your surroundings. Your consciousness leaves the centered position of witnessing the many energies around you, and you get sucked into focusing on just one of them. So one singular point of attention. This leaving the seat of self is not generally a willful act. The laws of attraction will cause it to happen. Consciousness is always drawn to the most distracting object, the bumped toe, the loud noise, or the hurting heart. It's the same law both inside and out. The consciousness goes to the place that distracts it the most. That's what we mean when we say, it was so loud it caught my attention. It drew your consciousness to it. When a blockage gets hit, the same attraction takes place and the consciousness gets pulled to the source of discomfort. So you go from this expanded consciousness and awareness of all things, and you get sucked to this one point, and suddenly all of your consciousness and awareness of all the other stuff gets blocked, right? Becomes limited. That place then becomes your seat of consciousness. After the discomfort settles down and lets you go, you'll naturally drift back toward your higher seat of awareness. This is where you sit when you're not distracted by disturbance. But as important as this higher seat is, it is equally important to see what happens when you're distracted by disturbance. Your seat of consciousness falls to where the disturbance is happening, and the whole world looks different, right? Because you're only looking now through this myopic lens, and you're only seeing this much, like the horse with the blinders on. Let's analyze this fall step by step. It begins when you get pulled down into the disturbed energy. You end up exactly where you don't belong. The last place you want to put your consciousness is down there, but that's where it will get pulled. Now, as you look out through your disturbed energy, everything is distorted by the haze of your disturbance. Things that looked beautiful now look ugly. Things you liked now look dark and depressing, kind of like the mirror from the Snow Queen, the Hans Christian Andersen story. If you haven't read that one, that's another really fun one. But nothing has really changed. It's just that you're looking at life from the seat of disturbance. Each of these shifts in your perspective should remind you to let go. The moment you start seeing that you don't like the people you used to like, the moment you start seeing that your life looks really different, the moment it all starts getting negative, let go. You should have let go before, but you didn't. And that's okay, because you get to choose. And now you can. The trouble is that it's more difficult now, right? The more we hold on to this stuff, the bigger it gets. Like our little dragon that doesn't get acknowledged early. You could have taken one breath and let go when it started. Now it takes serious work to get your previous seat of consciousness back without going through the whole cycle. And there's no wrong, right? It's just a new possibility. The cycle is the time it takes from the moment you leave your seat of relative clarity until you come back. This period of time is determined by the depth of the energy blockage that caused the initial disturbance. Once activated, the blockage must run its course. If you don't let go, you get sucked in. You are no longer free, you are caught. Once you fall from your seat of relative clarity, you are under the mercy of the disturbed energy. If that blockage is stimulated by an ongoing situation, you may stay down there for a long time. If it happens to be just a passing event and the energy released by the blockage dissipates immediately, then you'll find that you drift back up quickly. The main point is that it's not under your control. You lost it. This is the anatomy of falling. When you're in this state of disturbance, your tendency will be to act in order to try to fix things. You don't have the clarity to see what's going on. You just want the disturbance to stop. So you start getting down to your survival instincts. You may feel that you have to do something drastic. You may want to leave your husband or wife or move or quit your job. The mind starts saying all kinds of things because it doesn't like this space and it wants to get away from it any way it can. Now that you've fallen to that point, here comes the creme de la creme. Imagine that while you're lost in the disturbed energy, you actually do one or more of the things that your mind is telling you to do. Imagine what would happen if you actually quit your job, or if you decide, I've held this in long enough. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. You have no idea how big a step down that is. It's one thing if the disturbance is going on inside of you, but the moment you allow it to express itself, the moment you let that energy move your body, you have descended to another level. And this doesn't mean like repress it. In fact, it's exactly the opposite, right? If it comes up, great. But now what are you going to choose with it, right? So that's where you're invited to let go, as opposed to take that step to now make it even more solid or to put it into more form and structure. So now it's almost impossible to let go. If you start yelling at somebody, if you actually tell someone how you feel about them from this state of non-clarity, you have involved that person's heart and mind in your stuff. Now both of your egos are involved. Once you externalize these energies, you will want to defend your actions and make them look appropriate. But the other person will never think they were appropriate. Now even more forces are keeping you down. First you fall into the darkness, and then you manifest that darkness. When you do this, you are literally taking the energy of the blockage and passing it down. When you dump your stuff into this world, it's like painting the world with your stuff. You put more of that kind of energy into your environment and it comes back to you. You are now surrounded by people who will interact with you accordingly. It's just another form of environmental pollution, and it will affect your life. This is how negative cycles happen, or one might say how they get created and perpetuated. You actually take a piece of your stuff, which is nothing but deeply seated disturbance from your past, and you plant it in the hearts of those around you. At some point, it will come back to you. Anything you put out comes back. Imagine if you got upset and fully released your disturbed energies onto another person. This is how people ruin relationships and destroy their lives. How far down can you go? Once you're weakened, another blockage could get hit and yet another. You can fall all the way down until your life is an absolute mess. You can reach a point of total loss of control and completely lose your center. In this state, your previous seat of clarity may drift by once in a while, but you can't hold it. Now you're lost. Do you doubt that a single blockage getting hit in your heart could cause a fall that lasts a lifetime? It has been known to happen. But I'm going to say also there's an interesting thing that can occur here, where you perceive that you're doing all this falling, but actually what you're doing is you're releasing a lot of the form and structure, or the definitions, or the things that you were using to keep and perpetuate that control. So that's where, when you've heard people talking about things seeming like they're falling apart, and really they're just falling together, it's just that you're actually letting go of a lot of these things that you've held in place to try to protect yourself from the disturbances. And it can be a little bit strange, because all of a sudden all the form and structure that you were using to try to control everything is gone. And so now you're like, oh my gosh, where am I? There's no stability. And yet that actually can become a really powerful place from which to now create something new, and to be in this process of continuously letting go instead of constantly being in a state of protection. So what if all you had to do to avoid all of this was to let go in the beginning? If you had, and by beginning, that means just right now. It doesn't mean like, why didn't I do it years ago? It means like right now. Right now is the beginning. Okay? Okay. If you had, you would have gone up instead of down. But again, we're starting right now. That's how it works. When a blockage gets hit, it's a good thing. It's time to open up internally and release the blocked energy. If you let go and permit the purification process to take place inside, that blocked energy will be released. When it's released and allowed to flow up, it becomes purified and merges back into your center of consciousness. And this sense of up that he's talking about, this is where you might also perceive it as expansion, right? About expanding outward. This energy then strengthens you instead of weakening you, because you're getting tapped into all the energy, right? There is no separation. There's just all this magic and power available. You begin to go up and up, higher and higher, or expand out, 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 further and further. And you learn the secret of the ascent, or the expansion, and all of the above. The secret of the ascent is to never look down, always look up, right? It's about, we're not going back. It's ever forward. Even if you go in loop-de-loops and loops and circles and switchbacks and whatever, you're always going forward. Don't forget. It may not look like it makes sense, but if you're going this way, even if you're going this way, it's still always forward. No matter what happens below you, just turn your eyes upward and relax your heart. You do not have to leave the seat of self in order to deal with the darkness. It will purify itself if you let it. Getting involved in the darkness does not dispel darkness, it feeds it. Don't even turn toward it. If you see disturbed energies within you, it's okay. Don't think that you don't have blockages left to release. Just sit in the seat of awareness and never leave. No matter what goes on below you, open your heart and let it go. Your heart will become purified and you will never know another fall. And it's a practice. Come on, this is like, right, every moment. A practice of every moment. If you fall along the way, just get up and forget it. Right? What is that easy? Use the lesson to strengthen your resolve. Let go right then. Do not rationalize, blame, or try to figure it out. Don't do anything. Just let go immediately and allow the energy to go back to the highest center of consciousness it can achieve. If you feel shame, let it go. If you feel fear, let it go. If you feel fear, let it go. All of these are the remnants of the blocked energy that is finally being purified or released. Always let go as soon as you're aware that you didn't. Don't waste your time. Use the energy to go up and expand out. You are a great being who has been given a tremendous opportunity to explore beyond yourself. The whole process is very exciting, and you will have good times and bad times. All sorts of things will happen. That's the fun of the journey. So don't fall, let go. No matter what it is, let it go. The bigger it is, the higher the reward of letting go, and the worse the fall if you don't. It's pretty black and white. You either let go or you don't. There really isn't anything in between, right? The example of either being pregnant or not pregnant, right? So let all of your blockages and disturbances become the fuel for the journey. That which is holding you down can become a powerful force that raises you up. You just have to be willing to take the ascent. So chapter 9, removing your inner thorn. Okay. The spiritual journey, this is chapter 9. The spiritual journey is one of constant transformation. And again, spiritual has to do with looking at the power from within as opposed to looking to derive power from the external world. In order to grow, you must give up the struggle to remain the same and learn to embrace change at all times. One of the most important areas requiring change is how we solve our personal problems. We normally attempt to solve our inner disturbances by protecting ourselves. Real transformation begins when you embrace your problems as agents for growth. In order to understand how this process works, let's examine the following situation. Imagine that you have a thorn in your arm that directly touches a nerve. When the thorn is touched, it's very painful. Because it hurts so much, the thorn is a serious problem. It's difficult to sleep because you roll over on it. It's hard to get close to people because they might touch it. It makes your daily life very difficult. You can't even go for a walk in the woods because you might brush the thorn against the branches. This thorn is a constant source of disturbance, and to solve the problem, you only have two choices. The first choice is to look at your situation and decide that since it's so disturbing when things touch the thorn, you need to make sure that nothing touches it. The second choice is to decide that since it's so disturbing when things touch the thorn, you need to take it out. Believe it or not, the effects of the choice you make will determine the course of the rest of your life. This is one of the core level structural decisions or choices that lay the foundation for your future. Let's begin with the first choice and explore how it will affect your life. If you decide you have to keep things from touching the thorn, then that becomes the work of a lifetime. If you want to go for a walk in the woods, you'll have to thin out the branches to make sure you don't brush up against them. Since you often roll over and touch the thorn when you sleep, you'll have to find a solution for that as well. Perhaps you could design an apparatus that acts as a protective device. If you really put a lot of energy into it and your solution seems to work, you would think that you had solved your problem. You'd say, I can sleep now. And guess what? I got to go on TV and give a testimonial. Anybody who has a thorn problem can get my protective device, and I even get paid royalties. How awesome! So now you've got a whole life built around this thorn, and you're proud of it. You keep the woods thinned out, and you wear the apparatus to bed at night. But now you have a new problem. You fell in love. This is a problem, because in your situation, it's hard to even hug. Nobody can touch you because they might touch the thorn. So you design another kind of device that allows closeness among people without actually touching. Eventually, you decide you want total mobility without having to worry about the thorn anymore. So you make a full-time device that doesn't have to be unstrapped at night or changed over for hugging or other daily activities. But it's heavy. So you put wheels on it, control it with hydraulics, and install collision sensors. It's actually quite an impressive device. Of course, you had to change the doors in the house so that the protective apparatus could get through. But at least now you can live your life. You can go to work, go to sleep, and get close to people. So you announce to everyone, I have solved my problem. I am a free being. I can go anywhere I want. I can do anything I want. This thorn used to run my life, and now it doesn't run anything. Truth is, the thorn completely runs your entire life. It affects all your decisions, including where you go, whom you're comfortable with, and who's comfortable with you. It determines where you're allowed to work, what house you can live in, and what kind of bed you can sleep on at night. When it's all said and done, that thorn is running every aspect of your life. It turns out that the life of protecting yourself from your problem becomes a perfect reflection of the problem itself. You didn't solve anything. If you don't solve the root cause of the problem, but instead attempt to protect yourself from the problem, it ends up running your life. You end up so psychologically fixated on the problem that you can't see the forest for the trees. You actually feel that because you've minimized, let's try it again. You actually feel that because you've minimized the pain of the problem, you've solved the problem. But it is not solved. All you did was devote your life to avoiding it. It is now the center of your universe. It's all that is. In order to apply the analogy of the thorn to your whole life, we will use loneliness as an example. Let's say you have a very deep sense of inner loneliness. It's so deep that you have trouble sleeping at night, and during the day, it makes you very sensitive. You're susceptible to feeling sharp pangs in your heart that cause quite a disturbance. You have trouble staying focused on your job, and you have trouble with everyday interactions. What's more, When you're very lonely, it's often painfully difficult to get close to people. You see, loneliness is just like the thorn. It causes pain and disturbance in all aspects of your life. But in the case of the human heart, we have more than one thorn. We have sensitivities about loneliness, about rejection, about our physical appearance, and about our own mental prowess. We are walking around with lots of thorns touching right against the most sensitive parts of our hearts. At any moment, something can touch them and cause pain inside. You have the same two choices with these inner thorns as you did with the thorn in your arm. Surely it was obvious that you would have been much better off taking out that thorn. There's no reason to spend your life protecting the thorn from getting touched when you can just remove it. Once the thorn is removed, you are truly free of it. The same is true with your inner thorns. They can be removed. But if you choose to keep them without being disturbed by them, you must modify your life to avoid the situations that would stir them. If you're lonely, you must avoid going to places where couples tend to be. If you're afraid of rejection, you must avoid getting too close to people. If you do this, however, it is for the same reason that you thinned out the woods. You are attempting to adjust your life to make allowance for your thorns. In the earlier example, the thorns were outside. Now, they're inside. When you're lonely, you find yourself pondering what to do about your loneliness. What is it that you can say or do in order to not feel so lonely? Notice that you aren't asking how to get rid of the problem. You're asking how to protect yourself from feeling it. You do this either by avoiding situations or by using people, places, and things to protect as protective shields. You're going to end up just like the person with the thorn. The loneliness will run your entire life. You'll marry the person who makes you feel less lonely, and you'll think that's natural and normal. But it's exactly the same as the person who's avoiding the pain of the thorn instead of taking it out. You have not removed the root of loneliness. You have only attempted to protect yourself from feeling it. Should someone die or leave you, the loneliness would again disturb you. The problem will be back the moment the external situation fails to protect you from what's inside. If you do not remove the thorn, you will end up responsible for both the thorn and everything you pulled around yourself in an attempt to avoid it. Should you be fortunate enough to find someone who manages to diminish the feeling of loneliness, you will then begin worrying about keeping your relationship with this person. You've managed to compound the issue by avoiding the problem. This is exactly the same as using the apparatus to compensate for the thorn. You have to adjust your life accordingly. The minute you allow the core problem to stay, it expands out into multiple problems. It wouldn't dawn on you to just get rid of it. Instead, the only solution you see is to try to avoid feeling it. Now you have no choice. But now you have no choice but to go out and fix everything that affects it. You have to worry about how you dress and how you talk. You have to worry about what people think of you because that could affect your feeling of loneliness or need for love. If someone is attracted to you and this eases your feelings of loneliness, you wish you could say, "How do I need to act in order to please you? I can be any way you want. I just don't want to feel these periods of loneliness anymore." You now have this burden of worrying about the relationship. It creates an experience of underlying tension and discomfort, and it can even affect your sleep at night. The truth is, however, the discomfort you're experiencing isn't actually the feeling of loneliness. It's the never-ending thoughts of, did I say the right thing? Does she really like me? Or am I just kidding myself? The root problem is now buried under all these shallower issues that are all about avoiding the deeper ones. It all gets very complicated. People end up using their relationships to hide their thorns. If you care for each other, you are expected to adjust your behavior to avoid bumping into each other's soft spots. This is what people do. They let the fear of their inner thorns affect their behavior. They end up limiting their lives just like someone living an external thorn. Living with an external thorn. Ultimately, if there is something disturbing inside of you, you have to make a choice. You can compensate for the disturbance by going outside in an attempt to avoid feeling it, or you can simply remove the thorn and not focus your life around it. Do not doubt your ability to remove the root cause of the disturbance inside of you. It really can go away. You can look deep within yourself, to the core of your being, and decide that you don't want the weakest part of you running your life. You want to be free of this. You want to talk to people because you find them interesting, not because you're lonely. You want to have relationships with people because you genuinely like them, not because you need for them to like you. You want to love because you truly love, not because you need to avoid your inner problems, right? This is where you're living from choice and not just leading a life of reaction. How do you free yourself? In the deepest sense, you free yourself by finding yourself. You are not the pain you feel, nor are you the part that periodically stresses out. None of these disturbances have anything to do with you. You are the one who notices these things. Because your consciousness is separate and aware of these things, you can free yourself. To free yourself of your inner thorns, you simply stop playing with them. The more you touch them, the more you irritate them. Because you're always doing something to avoid feeling them, they are not given the chance to naturally work themselves out. If you want, you can simply permit the disturbances to come up, and you can let them go. Since your inner thorns are simply blocked energies from the past, they can be released. The problem is, you either completely avoid situations that would cause them to release, or you push them back down in the name of protecting yourself. Right? I mean, how often is it that when it actually comes up and comes out, that afterwards you feel so much better, right? But the anticipation of it is even worse than the release. It's like, there's a great, I'll see if I can find the link, but it's Will Smith. He does this awesome, or he tells about going skydiving. And basically the punchline is that the whole buildup, right? The whole buildup to this jumping out of a plane moment was excruciating, right? And then as he's flying, falling through the air, hurtling his body towards the earth, he finds this bliss, right? And he's like, in the moment of the greatest danger, he actually had the greatest bliss. But in all of the moments leading up to that, where he was in the least amount of danger, he actually had the greatest disturbance, right? Or the greatest anxiety. So anyway, I'll look for that link too, to pop into the show notes. It's worth a listen, in my opinion. So, where were we? Suppose you're sitting at home watching TV. You're enjoying the program until the two main characters fall in love. Suddenly you feel loneliness, but there's no one around to give you attention. Interestingly, you were fine just a few moments ago. This example shows that the thorn is always in your heart. It's just not activated until something touches it. You feel the reaction as a hollowness or a dropping sensation in your heart. It feels very uncomfortable. A sense of weakness comes over you, and you begin thinking about other times when you were left alone and of people who hurt you. Stored energy from the past releases from the heart and generates thoughts. Now, instead of enjoying TV, you're sitting alone, caught in a wave of thoughts and emotions. What can you do to solve this besides eating something, calling somebody, or doing something else that might quiet it down? What you can do is notice that you noticed. You can notice that your consciousness was watching TV, and now it is watching your inner melodrama. The one who sees this is you, the subject. What you are looking at is the object. A feeling of emptiness is an object. It is something you feel, but who feels it? Your way out is to just notice who's noticing. It's really that simple. It's much less complex than the protective apparatus with all its ball bearings, wheels, and hydraulics. All you have to do is notice who it is that feels the loneliness. The one who notices is already free. If you want to be free of these energies, you must allow them to pass through. you instead of hiding them inside of you. And that's where, if in previous seasons, if you've heard us talking about interesting point of view, the tool of interesting point of view, of noticing, oh, that's just an interesting point of view, and you realize that is just one point of view that I can choose among an infinite number, right? And once you do that, you realize you don't have to actually cling to it, and then you have more space, right? You have choice and you have space. And that is where you're actually now looking from this expanded point of view, perspective, or the seat of consciousness. Ever since you were a child, you've had energies going on inside. Wake up and realize that you are in there and you have a sensitive person in there with you, right? Right? There's that, you know, that's that layer that is trying to control everything and, you know, have the thoughts and the feelings to try and make all that. And then you actually have the expanded, right, being that when you can really tap into that, right, you can start to dissipate all of that other chatter stuff. Wake up and realize that you are in there and you have a sensitive person in there with you. Simply watch that sensitive part of you feel the disturbance. See it feel jealousy, need, and fear. These feelings are just part of the nature of being a human being. If you pay attention, you will see that they are not you. They are just something you're feeling and experiencing. You are the indwelling being that is aware of all of this. If you maintain your center, you can learn to appreciate and respect even the difficult experiences. For example, some of the most beautiful poetry and music have come from people who were in turmoil. Great art comes from the depth of one's being. You can experience these very human states without getting lost in them or resisting them. You can notice that you notice and just watch how experiencing loneliness affects you. Does your posture change? Do you breathe slower or faster? What goes on when loneliness is given the space it needs to pass through you? Be an explorer. Witness it, and then it will go. If you don't get absorbed in it, the experience will soon pass and something else will come up. Just enjoy all of it. And that's where we're able to be in the present from moment to moment instead of getting stuck in the past or being stuck in the future. If you can do this, you will be free, and a world of pure energy will come up within you. The more you sit in the self, the more you will begin to feel an energy that you have never experienced before. It comes up from behind rather than in front of you, where you experience your mind and emotions. When you are no longer absorbed in your melodrama, but instead sit comfortably deep inside the seat of awareness, you will start to feel this flow of energy coming up from deep within. This flow has been called Shakti. This flow has been called spirit. This is what you begin to experience if you hang out with the self instead of hanging out with your inner disturbances. You don't have to get rid of loneliness. You just cease to be involved with it. It's just another thing in the universe, like cars and grass and stars. It's none of your business. Just let things go. That's what the self does. Awareness does not fight. Awareness releases. Awareness is simply aware while everything in the universe parades before it. And I would add, awareness acknowledges, right? We can acknowledge and release. If you sit within the self, you will experience the strength of your inner being even when your heart feels weak. This is the essence of the path. This is the essence of a spiritual life. Once you learn that it's okay to feel inner disturbances and that they can no longer disturb your seat of consciousness, you will be free. You will begin to be sustained by the inner energy flow that comes from behind you. And like all around you, through you, right? Like there is no separation. Man, I mean, it's a practice for me. And yet I know it's true, at least for me. When you have tasted the ecstasy of the inner flow, you can walk in this world and the world will never touch you. Well, you'll be the world, right? There'll be no separation between you and the world. That's how you become a free being. You transcend. And that's the end of the chapter, but you transcend And sometimes, like, right, there's this sense of hierarchy or like getting somewhere. But it's that thing of like, if there were no walls, if there were no barriers, if you really just were tapped into that infinite energy, you're not going anywhere, but you're finally here, right? Like right here, right now. And when we're right here, right now, we are also right here, right now in all of it, right? So you are infinitely connected to all that is in any given moment through all space, time, dimensions, realities, yada, yada, yada. Which, you know, maybe thinking that way is not for everyone. And yet it's kind of fun to play with, at least for me. So that is it for today. Next week, we will complete part 3. So next week, chapter 10 is Stealing Freedom from Your Soul. And chapter 11 is Pain, the Price of Freedom. So I hope you've enjoyed this reading today. And as always, you are free to message me if anything comes up that you would like to discuss further with me, or if there are any aspects of your life, maybe disturbances that you're starting to become aware of, or patterns that are starting to rise up into your awareness that you'd like to play with, perhaps shift, change, or just be with. And if you'd like to go on that adventure with someone, I'd be honored to be that person. So you can find out more about me and coaching with me at www.rebeccaboswell.com. I do actually have a spot opening up in the next week or two, so if that spot is for you, please do send me a message. And otherwise, everyone, thanks for being here today, and I wonder what we'll discover next. Have a wonderful week. Bye.